Have you ever noticed that marketing advice seems to be literally everywhere, especially if you're in marketing? And I know that sounds kind of weird thing, like a weird thing to complain about, because if you think about it, it's actually pretty amazing. Today we have access to more knowledge than any marketer in history. We have YouTube, podcasts, books, LinkedIn, X, industry newsletters. Conferences, AI. And honestly, there's even some pretty good stuff out there floating around on Instagram and Facebook, if you know where to look. Think about how crazy that is. A marketer like you or me can learn from some of the smartest people in the world for free. And if you want to go deeper, there's more paid education and courses, communities, resources out the wazoo, of more available than ever before. That's incredible. And I genuinely think it's one of the reasons I've been able to grow throughout my career. But there's a problem. And I don't think the problem is necessarily bad advice. I think the problem is the volume of advice. Because despite having more access to marketing knowledge than ever before, a lot of marketers still feel stuck. And I think I know why. The challenge isn't finding information anymore. The challenge is knowing what to do with it. Think about how much marketing content you personally consume in a week. For me, it's everywhere. Some platforms are almost entirely marketing content for me. Others might be half or less. But then there's books and podcasts, articles, newsletters. It's a constant stream of ideas. And yes, a lot of those ideas are genuinely valuable. But they've also created this new problem. Because eventually, you start collecting advice faster than you apply it. And that's where things get dangerous. Not because the advice is wrong, because it's incomplete. You hear things, you should start a podcast or build a personal brand, post more content, run meta ads. They're the best. And then classic, right? Like most prominent right now, use AI. And then you hear other things like build an email list. Things like that. And the funny thing is, none of those are bad ideas. Most of them are excellent ideas for somebody in some situation under the right conditions. That's the part that's usually missing. The context. One thing I hear all the time is that email is still one of the highest ROI channels in marketing. And honestly, that's kind of true. It absolutely can be. But then you hear people but then people hear that and immediately start blasting emails because some guru told them the email is where the money's at. But what they didn't hear was the years spent building trust, or the quality of the content being sent, or the expectations that audience had, or the strategy behind it. They just copied the tactic, but they didn't understand the environment that made the tactic work. And I think that's happening everywhere. You'll hear somebody say, our podcast helped grow the company. And that's super exciting. But what you didn't hear about was the audience they already had, the credibility they had already built, the team supporting it, and the budget behind it. And then the distribution system pushing it. People copy the tactic without understanding the conditions. And then they get frustrated when it doesn't work. I've done this. I've seen it, and I've seen it hundreds of times in hundreds of companies. I've seen hundreds of companies do it. You see something cool, you copy and paste it into your business, and then you're disappointed when the results doesn't match. I know you've all been through this. And now I understand why. It's because the context was missing. And unfortunately, the internet doesn't really reward context. It rewards certainty. Nobody goes viral saying, well, it depends. Instead, they say, if you're not doing this, you're falling behind. Or, this is the future. Or some crap like, this one thing changed everything. Something like that. Because certainty spreads. Confidence spreads. Nuance doesn't. And the irony is that a lot of the people giving advice aren't even necessarily speaking from experience. Sometimes they're just repeating something they heard from someone else, who heard it from someone else, who heard it from someone else, because the message sounded confident. People believed it. And because it gets engagement, people just assume it's right. I've felt this myself. There have been plenty of times where everyone seemed convinced something was true, and deep down, my gut told me otherwise. But when enough people repeat something, it becomes difficult not to question yourself. That's why I think the best marketers eventually stop collecting advice and start filtering it. Most marketers think their job is to find better answers. I don't think that's true anymore. I think the real skill is developing better judgment. The question isn't, is this good advice? The question is this good advice for us? Does it fit our business? Does it fit our audience? Does it fit our resources? Does it solve the biggest problem we're actually facing right now? That is a very different way of thinking. And that's probably the biggest change in my own decision making over the years. I still consume a ton of marketing content, maybe more than ever. But now I'm not looking for instructions. I'm looking for possibilities. Most of the advice gets filtered out immediately. Not because it's bad, because it doesn't belong in my situation. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to admit, because some ideas are really exciting. Some ideas sound amazing. But they're attached to an enormous amount of effort, an enormous amount of context, and an enormous amount of commitment. And if you're not willing to do all of that, the tactic probably isn't going to save you. Which leads me into my final thought. I think marketing is slowly becoming a discipline of restraint. Everybody thinks success comes from doing more. more channels, tools, content, platforms, whatever. But maybe the real skill is in deciding what not to do. Because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And you need to be able to know which one is the right one. Focus creates leverage, and leverage creates results. So I don't think marketing advice is dangerous because it's wrong. I think it's dangerous because there's so much of it. And every piece of advice arrives wrapped in confidence, wrapped in urgency, wrapped in somebody else's success story. The challenge isn't finding more ideas. The challenge is in developing the judgment to know which ideas actually belong in your business. And honestly, if someone asked me what the most important marketing skill is today, I don't think I'd say anything like SEO or copywriting or AI or even content creation. I'd probably say judgment. Because the more advice there is, the more valuable discernment becomes. And I hope you found that thought-provoking and insightful. Thank you for watching my video. I hope to see you next week. Have a good one.